Welcome to Hello Unknown, a podcast exploring the hidden parts of the human experience. I'm Jonathan Wright. Today, the 6th Dalai Lama. The three favorite things of the 6th Dalai Lama were these: poetry, booze, and women. He was born in March of 1683 on the border of Tibet and Bhutan. There's paintings of him, so we sort of know what he looked like. In one of them, he sits with his legs folded on orange cloth. His right arm is pale, his face somewhat effeminate, with small lips and dark eyebrows, eyes that see a little deeper. So in Buddhism, the Dalai Lama is the Avalokitesvara. And I am sorry about the pronunciation. That's going to happen a lot in this episode. Anyway, he's the Avalokitesvara, a bodhisattva, or pseudo-human/god reincarnated. The way it works is that the previous Dalai Lama dies, and his spirit enters the body of a child, and he's reincarnated as the next. But you have to search for him. You don't know where he'll show up. And when the 5th Dalai Lama died, it was this really delicate time in Tibet. The country was sort of stuck between the Mongols, who were effectively occupying the country, and the great neighboring power, the Manchus in China. If any Mongol or Manchu of consequence had discovered that the 5th had died without a viable successor, the Tibetan political situation could have descended into anarchy. So the search for the 6th Dalai Lama is done in secret. They scour the countryside looking for the child. Eventually they find him, our hero, but they can't reveal him yet. He's just a child. So the Tibetans do a sort of weekend at Bernie's routine. For the next 14 years, when the Mongol princes come and insist on seeing the 5th Dalai Lama, they bring out an actor instead, an old monk named Depa Dayrab, posing in the place of the great 5th, wearing a hat and an eye shade. So I've started meditating. I have an album I listen to, which I know shows you a bit about my seriousness. It's called Meditations, though. It's right there in the title, so I know it's the good stuff. It started in early May of 2020. What I'd do is walk up the street from our house, past the Chinese food restaurant, to this sloping grass hill. I'd lie down in the sun, and I'd put my headphones in. Then I'd listen, and I'd let the tangle of feelings just fade. This was my tangle. First thread. Well, there's the pandemic. You're probably very tired of hearing about it by now, but understand. We were right at the beginning then. My sons both have lung problems. Also, I listened to too many podcasts, just constant numbers and updates. It felt uncertain and dark. Thread 2. I was also lonely. During this time, I fought more with my wife. We were siloing a bit, I think. We were irritable with each other. And Zoom, well, just not great. That's not the way I like spending time with friends. There were other threads. I was worried about my business, my law practice, worried in a way I hadn't been since the early days when I was just starting out and I didn't know if I'd make it. Business had declined a lot. I wondered if it might be permanent. And I was struggling with writing, my constant wrestling companion. Am I good enough? Will I succeed? And so on. It was lots of threads, lots of feelings, some I couldn't fully express. It was all tangled together. It was a mess. And meditation helped. I was feeling everything all at once, all these emotions, but with meditation, it was just the one thing. For those moments on the hill by the Chinese food restaurant, everything else was set aside. I had a theory for the 6th Dalai Lama. The 6th Dalai Lama, I'll call him 6 now, he had some really great attributes. He was very intelligent and a beautiful writer. He seemed very likable. But what he wasn't, what he never was a spiritual leader. He was never particularly competent as a politician. There were other things he focused on. I told you his favorites already. He was a poet, and he liked his alcohol, and 6 really loved women. Here's 4 lines of one of his poems in translation. This white bow and its cloth cover, on whom shall I bestow it? I will place it gently inside my lover's tiger skin quiver. So here's the theory. There was all this expectation on Six to be everything all at once, as the Great Fifth had been, and it completely overwhelmed him. That was my theory. Pretty simple. So what did he do? Instead of taking on everything, he focused on the one thing, what he wanted. So I had this little box for Six's story. I fit him in, and that was supposed to be my message, my plan for this episode, for my little history. And in my defense, there is evidence for this. But regardless, the more I read, the more I thought about Six's story, the less I believed the theory. At age 14, Six is called to Lhasa, the capital of Tibet. He takes his novice vows, and it's then he begins to learn exactly what it'll mean to be the Dalai Lama, what it'll mean to follow in the steps of the Great Fifth. And I can't really overstate this. The Great Fifth was perhaps the greatest Dalai Lama in history. He united Tibetan Buddhism, he built a palace, he managed the extreme political tension within the country, and much more. So Six is living in the Patala, the new palace, and he's studying and he's learning. But while he's doing this, he's also sneaking away. He's sneaking down completely in secret to Shoal, the little town just below the Patala. And each night he's hanging out with his friend, an official named Thargainas, and he's getting drunk, and he's meeting women, and he's having sex. This is my favorite story about Six. It starts with a secret door. He had it made in the back of the Patala. His palace, though he was just a teenager at the time. That's important to remember, I think. He was barely out of childhood. Anyway, this door, the secret door, it led back to his apartments so he could sneak in and out at night without being seen. So one night he leaves the palace. The air is cold and the ground is dry, and he goes to the home of his lover. And they make love, and while they're making love, it starts to snow. A thick blanket carpets the ground as the evening creeps on. When they're done, at dawn, he leaves his unnamed lover and traipses back to the palace. Six himself wrote a poem about what happened next. There's an old monk. Six calls him a bearded old yellow dog. The monk becomes suspicious. Maybe he's seen Six leave before. Maybe he's seen Six's room empty at night. But this morning he chooses to investigate. He finds the door, and then he sees these footprints leading away from it, back to Shoal. So the monk follows them, and he sees that they lead all the way to the house of the lover. And Six is exposed. Who cares if it's secret now, he writes. There are footprints in the snow. Buddhist Tibet exploded. This was a major scandal. There are a number of different strains of Buddhism, some of which are more accommodating to, worldly desires. But the sect then ruling Tibet, the one given power by the Great Fifth, called the Gelugpa, is very much ethics, discipline, meditation. It was austere. So the leaders are upset. The heads of the great monasteries, they're furious. There are official pronouncements. Some Mongolian chieftains even suggest that maybe he's not the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama at all, that he's a fake. So, I'm not the only one with the little box for Six. Here's what he does. Six reaches the age of 20. This is an important year. It's the age he's supposed to take his full monastic ordination. It's at this time that he'd become the Dalai Lama he was supposed to be, the true successor as the reincarnation of the Great Fifth in all his many roles. And Six says, no thanks. He goes to the Panchen Lama, sort of the number 2 to his number 1, and he says, I'd like to return my vows. If anything, this is way worse than the scandal with a woman and the footprints in the snow. This isn't a misdeed. It's the overturning of an entire order, the entire concept of what the Dalai Lama was supposed to be. And honestly, when you think about it, it must have been very difficult for those in power. Sticking your neck out, saying to an entire nation that a certain person is the reincarnation of maybe the most important figure in the history of Tibet, and then having that same person turn around and say, I'm not playing. That's embarrassing. So yeah, they were angry. They plead with him, the regent, the monks, the princes, the Mongol head of the army in Tibet. Then they start to threaten him. Don't do this. You can't do this. But Six isn't interested. He knows what he wants. The conflict becomes so escalated that at one point Six says simply, "If you don't let me do it, I'll commit suicide in front of this major monastery, the Tashalimpo Monastery in Shigatse." And I think if I tried to keep my theory going, the weak Dalai Lama collapsing under the weight of responsibility, it would be here, right here, that it fell apart. Six knew exactly what he wanted. He knew it, and he was strong enough to sacrifice everything to get it, which he sort of did. But I'll get to that. First, they let him do it. Six renounced his vows. He wore rings on his fingers. He let his hair grow long. He remained Dalai Lama, but is the only Dalai Lama, before or since, to live at least part of his life as a layperson, a political head only, and in Six's circumstance, more of a figurehead, but still a poet, and a great one, and a lover, and probably great at that too, as he wished to be. But that's not the end. The truth is, we don't know exactly how it ends. Here's what we do know. It's 1706. Six is 23. He finds himself on the road to Peking. We're told he'd been sent for by the Emperor of China himself, but he has no choice whether to go. The Mongol princes force him on his way with a band of Mongol soldiers to keep an eye on him. They make their way through Tibet and eventually find themselves in Kokonor. It's basically right at the heart of modern China. There's a big lake there. It's beautiful. A deep blue surrounded by low white-peaked mountains. And then, quite abruptly, the story ends. We're told the sixth Dalai Lama died en route to China. There's no funeral, there's no body found, and if you're a Mongol prince in Tibet, it's a very convenient ending to an inconvenient Dalai Lama. We're left with a poem, supposedly Six's final poem. White crane, lend me your wings, I'll not fly far away. Once around Letang, and I'll be back. And after the death of Six, in the town of Letang, the seventh Dalai Lama was born. In June of this past year, our family took a holiday. This tangle of emotion I'd been feeling in May, it was not gone. If anything, it was worse. I needed the rest and some time to reflect. So we stayed at home, but I took 2 weeks off work. We went to the beach, we visited parks, the normal staycation thing, and I had some spare time, so I started to clean. Beneath our house is a crawl space, our storage area. It's incredibly messy. Down there is my childhood bed, winter tires, a supply of Costco guava juice. But there's lots more. Assorted stuff from our past, my wife's and mine, all in these blue Rubbermaids, like overfilled time capsules stacked on top of each other. So I started to clean. While I did that, I was looking for something. A sort of cure. Every once in a while, I'd open a bin. I'd rifle through, then I'd close it. I'd open another, shuffle around the old DVDs and binders. Not there, close it again. I did this a few times, and then I opened one, and I couldn't believe it. Let me go back a bit. Since I was a child, I'd written in notebooks. Early on, it was mostly just terrible, over-emotional poetry. Here's a stanza for you. You took me to see the river, and you showed me the beauty of the shore. I really wanted to call you, but you didn't even want me to before. Okay, so horrible poetry early on, but later it evolved into more of a journal. If you've listened to earlier episodes of this podcast, you know a bit about my history. I have anxiety, lots of it, always have. I had far too much expectation about life, and dating specifically. I've wanted to be a writer. All of that, and much more, was in these notebooks. But here's the thing. About 6, maybe 7 years ago, in this sort of fit of shame, I was in our old storage locker below our apartment reading through these notebooks, and I was so embarrassed, and I basically ran to the dumpster in our parking garage, and I'd emptied out into the bin my cardboard box with all of my notebooks. All of them gone. Since then, I've written other notebooks, ones I haven't thrown out. It was actually those I was looking for in the basement of our new house. But instead of finding them, I find the pile of old notebooks that I am certain I threw out. And honestly, I can't explain it. Either the original memory was some sort of dream, or I threw out other notebooks, or there was a notebook miracle. Stranger things have happened, I guess. Who knows? I started to read them. There's one from 2010, black plastic cover, a Mead 5-star notebook. It was about dating the woman who's now my wife, our early struggles. There was uncertainty in law school and wrestling with writing, about wanting to write and not having the time or the talent. Then a purple Hilroy notebook from high school, pages full of math, weird drawings, poetry, and then the beginning of a novel. On the map beneath his finger lay the land of Cassie, a small nation dwelling within the valleys and mountain passes of the Spictai Mountains. There's more. A dark blue cover from 2006, girlfriends, writing, poetry, religion, uncertainty. A book with a black cover from when I was in India in 2008. This one is more poetry, thoughts about dating, and some strange gibberish philosophizing. Here's the quote. "Am I what I am, or is this too a state from which I will eventually pass? The inclination of my current state is to sit down in my previously determined existence because the thought of self-creation is too terrible." But this is me. I found these notebooks and I started to read, and the feelings, my anxiety, the stress in our marriage, fears about work, about friends, about writing, the pandemic, they started to fade. It was like the act of reading my past was a sort of antidote. That's why I'd wanted my recent notebooks. This wasn't the first time. I'd done this before. But instead of my recent past, by a notebook miracle, I had returned to me my ancient history. I understand myself backwards. I know myself through story. I make sense of the unknown in my life, my messiness, my tangle of emotion and identity, by fitting it into a context. It's an emotional theory of who am I, what am I good at, who and what do I love, and also where have I been before. So as my theories form around me, maybe an epiphany in the shower or by reading a notebook and seeing myself in the third person, the feeling of chaos and uncertainty slowly fades. Until, of course, there are new circumstances, new crises, new fears, and the feelings return, and I'm lost again in the unknown. No story, no theory is truly faithful. With Six's life, I started with a meditation album. Then I found him, the Dalai Lama. I tried to tell his story through the lens of a theory, that he was overwhelmed by expectation and instead focused on the one thing. But the theory wasn't faithful to the truth, so I pivoted. Not the Dalai Lama overwhelmed with responsibility, but one who knew what he wanted, who chose it, and was willing to live the truth of it, even if it meant his life. But it isn't the whole story. It's still not, and it can't be. It's just another theory. One more theory grappling with the unknown, with the tangle of a beautiful life. These vines of feeling and identity and meaning that no story, no theory can fully express. So in light of that, let's follow the tracks in the snow just a little further. There's an alternate ending. It comes from a monk named Nyawang Lundrup Dargya, who claimed to be one of Six's disciples. The story is that Six escaped. The reason why no body was found was because there was no body. The murder plot against his life had failed. Instead of dying there on the road to China in Kokonor, he lived on. According to the monk, Six later went on a pilgrimage through Tibet and a number of other South Asian countries until, in 1716, he found himself in the Alagsha region of Mongolia. He settled down there. If the story is true, he was there for 30 more years. And in 1746, he died. In peace. Our episode today is written and produced by me, Jonathan Wright. More production and editing, along with the music, is by Taylor Swindells of Neighborhood Libraries. Special thanks for help with this episode to Drew Gilmore, Maddie Lee, Jared Ng, and Ian Wright. If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate and review it in your favorite podcast platform. Or, hey, how about all of them? That's how more people get to hear us. And you can contribute to our Patreon at patreon.com/hellounknown. And if you have suggestions for new episodes or comments, you can email us at hellounknownpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at hellounknownpod. Our final episode of Season 1, number 6 of 6, comes out next week. Please subscribe and you won't miss it. Thanks for listening.